Hi, boosters. Welcome to the Boosted Volunteer. Tonight, we're going to have our webinar on Booster Club concessions. We're going to cover how to run a profitable concession stand, how to streamline operations, how to get enough volunteers, and how to run your concession stand like a champ. I'm Robin Eisler. I'm the CEO and founder of Booster Hub, a software application built to help you run your booster club like a champ. Our webinars are a great tool and resource for you for running your booster clubs. You can join us in our live sessions by visiting boosterhub.com and registering for the upcoming webinars, where we include additional tools that you'll find in some of these recorded webinars. So let's get started. First of all, when I was asked to join our booster club, the first question they said was, "Will you join our booster club as an officer on the board?" And I said, "Absolutely. I'll do anything except for concessions." So I've always thought that concession is the most thankless job in a booster club, the hardest work. And we go out, we give support to all of you concession champions out there who quietly and behind the scenes gather all the supplies, keep our concession stands stocked and full, and make money for our booster clubs, a lot of times with not a lot of recognition. So for those of you that do that, we appreciate you. And for those that you who haven't run a concession stand yet, I'm going to let you know it's a lot of work, but we're going to give you some ways on how to make life a little easier. So today we're going to cover, first of all, is running your concession stand a fundraiser? And let's talk about that. We'll cover licensing and food safety, some things that maybe you haven't thought about, what tools you can use, payment solutions, winning food choices, operations, how to maximize your profit. And I always close our webinar with tips and tricks. I like to give you 5 or 10 takeaways that you can take right back to your booster club and implement some ideas that we've seen work across booster clubs across the country. So one of the most frightening things that I hear in our Booster Hub demos and talking with booster clubs is our concession stand just breaks even. We think actually we're not even really sure. How do we know? And we see this in a lot of concession stands. One group buys the supplies, another group sells it. No one actually looks at what happens to see if it actually makes money. Are nachos profitable? Is popcorn profitable? If we get Chick-fil-A, are we going to make money on that? So these are some of the questions that you want to be thinking about if you're taking on your concession stand, because really you either have two goals. You want to make the concession stand profitable and make it a fundraiser for your organization, or you're there just to feed the people. And sometimes we see that with tournaments and things like that, where you're just trying to provide enough food for the students who are attending. And that may be a slightly different case than a concession stand that we're trying to use as a fundraising tool for our booster club. So as we look at that, the first question is it a fundraiser? So, in a lot of associations or groups, you're limited to a certain number of fundraisers every year. And the question is, does a concession stand count as a fundraiser? Generally, it does not. So, it's kind of like spiritware. It's one of those quiet fundraisers that you can run in the background and make money on. So, if you have limitations on how many times a year you can fundraise, generally concessions is not included in that. Again, we talked about you may have some use cases where you're just trying to feed a big group of people and you don't necessarily need to make money off of it. And in that case, you may not need it to be a fundraiser, in which case you might price things differently than you would in a concession stand that you're trying to make a profit from. If it is a fundraiser and you are trying to make a profit, you're going to want to think about tracking your inventory. How much did you purchase? How much did you sell? There's some great automated tools like Booster Hub that'll do this for you. So you know that you have this many cookies on hand and you sold this many, or you bought this much candy and you have this much on hand. You'll want to know what your break-even point is on an item. This becomes really important when you're buying things like outside vendor sandwiches and things like that. When you're buying things in bulk like popcorn or candy, it's something you don't have to be as concerned with because your profit margins are a lot higher. But when you start paying an outside vendor per item, you need to know exactly how many of those items you have to sell just to break even. That's before you've even raised any money for the Booster Club. You're going to want to think about how to maximize sales. We've got some great strategies on how you can give a little boost to those sales with some communication tools and some other ideas. And then finally, you're going to want to know at the end of the year, after you did all this work, did you make a profit? And so it's really important to keep good records. Again, in Booster Hub, we have some great tools in our budgeting system where you can add a tag to all of your expenses and all of your income and very easily click a button and see how much money you've made on concessions for the year. So these are some things you're going to want to think about if you're planning on using your concession stand as a fundraiser for your organization. Now let's talk licensing. So licensing varies by state and municipality. So you're going to want to check with your state and your city and see what the requirements are. In many cases, high school concession stands are exempt. However, you need to check it out. In some cases, you may need a food service license, a business license, there may be a fire department permit, things like that. So you're going to want to go to your local county board or city board and find out what's required to serve food in your concession stand. If you're working through your high school or your school board, they likely have already done some of this work for you. So you could start there and see if anybody has any suggestions. One of the things that I recommend is that anybody leading your concession stand, maybe it's your concession chair or co-chair, that they go online and get a AAA food handler license, or it's called a food handler license. AAA's food handler's one company that does it. It's like $6 or $7, and it covers 50 different topics that are going to be really helpful if you're working in and around food to make sure you keep it safe and healthy for everyone. So definitely recommend that for anybody that's working in your concession stand more than once as a volunteer. Again, you'll want to take a look at your local and state business licenses and if you need anything there. In some states, concessions have sales tax. Food is often exempt from sales tax, but if you're selling any kind of merchandise, a t shirt or a hat or a sticker at your concession stand, that's likely going to require sales tax collection. So, again, something you'll want to talk to your local government entity and see what's required there. Most booster clubs think that they are exempt from collecting sales tax, and they are not. If sales tax is required on the item, even though you may not be required to pay sales tax or maybe sales tax exempt paying sales tax, you still may very well need to collect it and have a sales tax permit license number. So, again, something you want to check into with your local government organization. And then finally, you want to think about insurance for your concession stand. Booster clubs don't have very many assets, but often one of the places you'll see them is in a concession stand. So, what exactly am I talking about? Well, let's say you bought a popcorn machine and the butter in the popcorn machine overflows and burns a volunteer. That poses some liability for the booster club and your board. So you'll want to consider getting a basic liability policy for your booster club. RV Nuzio is a great company. You can find them online. They offer nice coverage packages for booster clubs that include some liability and not very expensive. You're just looking maybe a couple $100 a year for very good coverage for booster clubs. Now let's talk a little bit about food safety. We talked about that food handler license. There's also one called Serve Safe Certified. This is like the next level. So this course is a little bit more expensive. It's going to be in the $100 range. It's going to take a little longer, and it's a professional course. But if you're running a pretty good sized concession stand, you're serving food that you're preparing, not just packaged food, you may want to have somebody on your team get this Serve Safe certification just to make sure that you're meeting all the requirements. You're going to learn about things like temperature control, safety for fire, like if you're using propane or fuel for generators. We did have a terrible situation here in Texas a few years ago where the fuel caught on fire and injured and actually killed a volunteer. So just some things that everybody's excited. We get out there, we're going to get a grill, we're going to be grilling burgers and dogs tonight, and maybe we forgot about a few of the safety things. So I definitely recommend just taking a little bit of time to make sure that you're covering all those issues. Hand washing protocol, you're going to want to make sure you've got a sink and a place for volunteers to wash their hands, gloves, hair restraints, serving tools, another thing you want to think about that some of these courses will cover. And if you're doing all packaged food, you're just doing chips and candy and clothes, sodas, it's not as big of a deal, but you still need to think about how the shelf life of those products, keeping them cold, things like that. So again, if you're going to be involved in a booster club on an ongoing basis, you're leading a program, these are just some great ways that you can learn the things that you don't know and try to get ahead of issues that may cause problems in the concession stand. When you're looking at opening up a concession stand, you've got the options. You can go basic with just the stuff we can go down to Sam's Club or Costco and buy and put on the shelf, or you can get a little fancier and you can have hot dogs and popcorn. And some of those things have greater profit margins. So you may want to think about doing some of those things. However, they're going to require things like equipment. So if you want to have popcorn, you're going to need a popcorn machine. Well, that has a cost. And so we'll look at that a little bit later of how to determine what's profitable. But if you're going to buy a popcorn machine, consider going in on it with a couple other booster clubs. So maybe if you're a football program and you're in the fall, you could share it with the baseball program in the spring, and then you can get more use out of the machine instead of it sitting there just part-time. You may also want to look into leasing or renting the machine. Sometimes these machines can get a little expensive, and if you lease or rent, you don't have to worry about maintenance, and it's always clean and ready to go. You're going to want to think about storage and prep. So I have been part of about 4 different booster clubs, and they all did this slightly differently. And I will tell you, the clubs that had paid to have commercial refrigerator units in for the drinks were much easier to work in than the ones that used ice on drinks. And at our school, actually, the football concession stand did more ice on the drinks. And it's cheaper than buying a big refrigerated machine. But the problem is then you have all the cleanup from the ice and the water's melting all the time. You have to stock the ice. You have to do that kind of thing. And in our volleyball concession stand, we had an indoor unit that stayed cold all the time during season. And we never had to go through that prep work or that cleanup work. So again, it's something that if you can go in with another booster club and consider buying like one of those refrigerated, the door slides open and all the drinks are behind it, it may be a good option for you. Again, all concession stands are a little bit different, so it just depends on your setup, but something you may want to consider. We talked about some service and safety equipment. So you're going to want serving utensils. And if you're serving popcorn, you're going to need bags to serve it in, or cookies, you're going to need packaging to put it in. So you want to think about those things. And then, of course, your concession stand should have a first aid kit and some cleaning supplies. So when you go to stock it, these are things that'll be really helpful that may not catch you by surprise a little bit later on. Another problem that I hear is we just deposit the money. We took in $3,000 at our concession stand today, and we have no idea how much we sold, but we sold $3,000 worth. And I hate hearing that because that is a recipe for fraud. Concession stands are one of the greatest places in a booster club for people to steal money. It's very easy to accept cash, put it in your pocket, not put it in the drawer, or the person who's collecting the cash takes them off the top. And we see that happen more often than you think throughout booster clubs across the country. So one really good solution is to make sure that you're using some sort of payment solution that records what you're selling so that you can see at the end of the night, this is how much cash we got and this is what we sold. And it's about the same amount. We're volunteers working, so sometimes we don't expect it to be exact, but it should be in the ballpark. So you've got a couple different options for payments. You have cash, and cash is great because everybody has it usually, although these days it's getting less and less. But it does require change and going to the bank both before and after the event. It does have the highest potential for fraud, and it does include that extra work, getting the change, depositing it, counting it, all those kinds of things. We find that when a booster club implements credit cards for the first time, their sales actually go up 40%. So we get a lot of people say, oh, those credit card fees are 2% or 3%. Oh my gosh, we don't want to pay that. That's going to take away from our profits. But the opposite happens when somebody comes to your concession stand with a credit card. They're willing to buy more. And it just, we see it across the board, about 40% increase just from that one change. So if you're not accepting credit cards, you should find some way to do so. And I guarantee you'll find that your concession sales are boosted just by offering that second payment method. You'll definitely want to look into the tap to pay method or use a QR code. So many of the kids these days have the Apple Watch or they have their phone, but they don't have any credit card. So that's a great thing to consider. And then anytime you're accepting credit cards, you're going to want to look into the fees to set up the machines, how much each transaction costs, and if there's an ongoing fee for like renting a terminal or things like that. We talked about recording everything that you sell. That's what we call a point of sale system. So that's not necessarily what takes your credit card, but that's what tells you everything that you sold. That's one of the things that we offer in Booster Hub. We have a great point of sale cashier screen where you can ring up both cash and credit card purchases. And that way you've got the full picture of how much you've sold at your concession stand. Some of our winning food choices that we want to talk about are things with high margin. You want to look for something that you can sell for at least double what you paid for it. That's kind of the minimum, and really it should be more than that. If the food is shelf stable and you can keep it if you don't sell at all, that's kind of a bonus because if you've got food that's going to perish, to have to be thrown out at the end of an event can really impact your profit margin. So that's something. If it's pre-made, that's great. Sometimes we'll see more sales on something that we prepare, like a tacos or a nachos or something like that. But if you can buy it all ready to go, and there's so many great options now at the Sam's and the Costco's, that's a really great way to keep your concession stand running fast, knowing exactly how much you're going to make because everything's pre-portioned and pre-packaged, and getting it out there. You'll want to adjust with the season, maybe have a summertime menu when the temperature is above 70, and then a wintertime menu when the temperature is below 70. Add things like cocoa as it gets cooler and things like that. And definitely combo deals get people to buy more. So it's not that you make any more money. It's just when you offer a combo, they're going to get a drink and a side and a main dish instead of just getting like the main dish and the drink. So you want to try to offer combo meals as part of your menu. So what food has the highest markup potential? Okay, I've kind of teased it here. You've got the popcorn, but there's a reason why you see popcorn in every single concession stand. And that's because it has a 900% markup. You can buy, this little bag of popcorn for, $15, and you can do, 10 servings at 3 or 4 or $5, actually more than 10, probably 20 or 30 servings. So it's got a great markup, and that's why it's so popular. It's also good if, you pop just enough, you sell it. If you don't need any more, you don't make any more. But if you need more, you can make just a little bit more. So it's not coincidence that you see popcorn at so many concession stands. It's just a great item to sell. Soda and water are another great one. Those have really high markup. You can either do the canned sodas, or perhaps you have your school or your district has a contract with one of the distributors, and then you could do the fountain sodas. So that's probably something that's more district driven than Booster Club driven. So you may want to look into that. Hot dogs, nachos, they're easy to make. They're easy to keep warm and follow food safety best practices. And they also have high profit margins. Candy's great because it has a long shelf life. You can use it for the whole season, sodas as well. So those are things that you can buy. And if you don't sell them at this event, you'll sell them at the next event. Just make sure that in summer months, you're putting the candy, either refrigerating it or inside in the AC. It's not sitting outside and melting. We've had that happen at a couple of our concession stands. If you are going to prepare food and make a menu, tacos have a great markup because you can put just a little bit of protein in them and some cheap filler, like the lettuce or the cabbage or whatever. So they have a high margin. Um, and they're easy to prepare. You can make them quickly and make them as you need them. On bottled water, one of the tips that I love is find a sponsor for it and put their logo on the label. And then you've got your water paid for the season. It becomes like a double fundraiser. So something to think about. And then be sure to adjust your menu for seasonal or regional favorites. Here in Texas, we have a lot of our booster clubs that do corn. So they put corn in there, and they'll do like a Mexican take on it with your cotija cheese and some mayo and the spices. And a lot of people love that here at the concession stands in Texas. When you're looking into running your booster club, you're going to want to think about the staffing, and you're like, oh, it's just like 10 volunteers. Why do I need staffing? Concession stands run much better when you have dedicated roles. So when you have one person manning the checkout, one person doing the cooking, one person running in between, and it doesn't mean they have to do it for the whole shift, but when you have a dedicated role and these are your responsibilities, it's much better than one person trying to do it all. It's great to have a little training checklist, maybe for each position, or just make a little video with a QR code like, hey, here's how you set up the popcorn machine, and you have a video of somebody actually doing it. That's really easy to do these days. Be careful when you're shift scheduling that you don't change over at the big busy periods. And this is like a really easy thing to do because, hey, it's football game, it's halftime. Okay, let's switch volunteers at halftime. But be sure that you overlap during those busy periods, or maybe even make the shift change before or after, so that you don't have a lot of commotion during that really busy time in your concession stand. And try to get community volunteers to help with your concessions. Go beyond your current families. Maybe reach out to alumni or former members of your program. But that way you can build a bigger volunteer base, so you're not always asking like those same families, hey, we need you at the concession stand, we need you at the concession stand. And if you have a fairly good sized program, ask for 100% participation. Ask for people to everyone take one shift at the concession stand throughout the year, and that helps get them all covered. When we're looking at operations, you want to do prep work before you open your concession stand. So you're going to want your workspace organized, stock supplies. I like to do it at the end of the shift so that when you finish this concession event, you get all your candy restocked, all your chips restocked, everything ready to go, so that when you come in on the next one, if you're running late, you're ready to turn on the lights and go. Pre-cook whatever you can if possible, if you can keep it warm. Don't try to cook to order. Make sure you're doing quality control and checking your temperature every 2 hours. Always use first in, first out rotation, so you're not like leaving something there for 4 hours that was made several hours ago. And then be sure and clean the equipment at the end of each event. When we're talking about service, good customer service makes a difference in a concession stand. Sometimes you can get away with being a little bit slow, but people want to be served quickly, and they expect, their orders to be turned in fast and get them and be on their way. So some options, some things to make your service a little faster is get one of those big TV menus. So you can buy a TV; they're cheap, 50 or $100. You can change the menu out with just plugging in a screen with an HDMI cord, and that's a great way to visually make your menu easy and to keep it updated very quickly. If you don't use Canva, it's a great option to just make a menu and list the items and change them out quickly. Consider doing pre-orders. So you can put an item on your website or have a QR code there and have people pay before they get to the window, and somebody watching those orders as they come in. And then you can fulfill them very quickly. You don't have to wait till they get there and start the whole process. They've already paid. You already know what they want. Things are already moving along. Consider an express lane for just drinks and snacks, and people paying by cash or credit, that they can get through those items very quickly. If you are doing a popular item, try to have some pre-made. So at our school, we used to sell iced tea, and we'd have the iced teas all poured and ready to go. So as soon as somebody bought one, we just had to grab it and go. And try to make a goal of less than 90 seconds from the time the person comes up to the counter that you've got their food in hand. That's sort of the expectation from people these days. And so you're going to want to try to meet that requirement. And we know you're a volunteer doing the best you can, and these aren't paid employees, but it does make a difference in the return of the success of the concession stand. So let's talk about how to maximize profit. First of all, you're going to want to plan the menu ahead and budget for profit. So you're going to be thinking about the cost of every item, how much you can sell it for, how much you're going to make, and does that item deserve a place on your menu? So sometimes you get people who have, oh, we want this, we want that, but the item either just doesn't sell or doesn't have enough room for profit margin. We saw this with a local chicken sandwich place. Everyone wanted those sandwiches in our concession stand, and every time we bought them we lost money, because we couldn't double the price of them, to sell in our concession stand. And so be thinking about that when you're planning your menu. Your food cost should be 25 to 35% of your selling price. Again, if you can't double or triple or quadruple the selling price for what you paid for it, it's probably not a good option for your concession stand. You're going to want to buy in bulk at Sam's and Costco and those types of places when you can. You can also do things like Restaurant Depot, and then perhaps your school district has a contract with a food service company. So those are things that you may want to look into. You're going to want to track waste. So if you made 40 hot dogs and you only sold 20, you didn't make any money on hot dogs tonight. So you're going to want to know how much got thrown away, keep an inventory of everything, and know how much you sold. Portion control is another biggie. So a lot of times you're selling nachos. Well, how many chips should be on there? Let's say we've budgeted for 15 chips, but our volunteers are putting 25 or 30 chips. You're not going to get as much out of that nacho supply as you had intended. So make sure you've got an idea of how much you should be serving, and you're also showing the volunteers this is about how much it should be, and this is how much it should look like. We talked about combo meals. That helps people buy more. Um, Train your volunteers who are taking the orders to upsell. Would you like a drink with that? How about a cookie? Can we offer you some popcorn? And they'll get 20 or 30% of that times they ask, just boosting those sales. And then think about selling things pre-game or pre-event. So if you're hosting a big tournament or a music concert or something like that, send out a link to pre-purchase meals for the students. That's going to help you with two things. One, it's going to help you sell more. Two, it's going to help you plan how much you need. So we get a lot of questions like, how do I know how much to buy? Well, pre-orders are a great way to know how much to buy ahead of time and limit that waste, especially for your really big events. Here's a sample of a per item profit calculator. We're looking for hot dogs here. And so we've got our total purchase cost, how many units were in each package, the cost per unit, how much we used, and then the total cost for the item. So you can see roughly our hot dogs are costing us just over $1. We're selling them for almost $4, just over $2.50 in profit. Our food costs 29%. This is exactly what you want to see. And you should run this sheet for every item on your menu. We are going to give you a link to this calculator at the end, so stay tuned for that. Profit by sales, this is where you can see how much each item sold for. So again, this is where you want to be a little bit picky. If your hot dogs aren't making as much money as your barbecue sandwiches, then consider only having barbecue sandwiches. So you can simplify things by focusing on the items that have really high profit and are selling. So you got to have both. You got to have really high profit and they're selling. And so you want to look at overall sales and how much are we selling and what did it bring in. Here's some tips and tricks and practical strategies that you can implement in your concession stand. One, we talked about share equipment with other boosters, buy in bulk with other boosters as well. So perhaps you could buy your sodas in bulk with your soccer team, or your choir, and then you can get a discounted rate because you're buying more. Pre-order for big events, we talked about that. Use inventory to adjust supply, both buying and selling. You really need to be tracking how much you purchased and how much you sold. Track your events annually. If you know that the football game against this other team always is your biggest event of the year, then track that so that next year you can buy more for that game and less for the game that's not as well attended. You may want to consider offering family packs. So for $20, you get 4 hot dogs, 4 chips, 4 sodas. Great way to, again, to upsell. If family's there and one person doesn't want it, but there's 3 persons, they may go ahead and buy that 4 pack. Promote your concessions on social media, or if you've got an app for your club, send out and say, hey, we've got warm cookies in the concession stand. Hey, hot dogs just went on sale. Tonight we're offering barbecue sandwiches. People love that. It really makes them feel connected to the community, and it helps you sell more. So don't forget those great communication tools that you've got in your booster club. A few more tips and tricks. You may want to keep some frozen items on hand. I learned this the hard way. We were running concessions, 4 different concession stands at a big volleyball tournament with about 300 students there, and we ran out of food. Fortunately, we had a freezer where we kept food for our own team, and so we were able to go grab items out of that freezer, just frozen burritos and things like that we were still able to sell for $1 or $2 or $3. But those things don't go bad as quickly. So consider keeping some frozen items for those nights when you sell out and you need just a little bit more. You've got something quick that you can throw in the microwave and get it out. If sales are slow, particularly if you've purchased items and they're perishable, go out into the crowd to sell. You'll sell much faster walking through the crowd and having, a sandwich in your hand than you will standing behind the concession stand. I always used to do this at the end of our event. So if we had, again, those perishable items that we had to sell or they were going to go bad, mark them down to $1, because you're either going to throw them away or you're going to sell them for $1. Or what we would do is give them to the students and the players afterwards if they didn't sell. But $1 in is $1 in at that point. So people will buy them on their way out and give you, a 5 or a 20 and make a donation to the club. In some cases, you may want to outsource your concession. Food trucks are a good option, or you have the slushy machine the slushy machine truck come. So those are some good options, particularly if you're doing a bigger event. You may want to look at doing it with professionals who then give you a commission based off what they sell. One thing I recommend is to have a standby QR code. Wi-Fi is essential for processing credit cards, and we find that high school stadiums and high school concession stands in schools are the single worst places in the world for Wi-Fi. And so if you can keep a QR code that people can just scan and make a donation, a lot of people in good faith will, if you tell them, hey, our system's down, but can you scan this QR code and send us a donation, they're going to send you $5 or $10. You may even make more money, but it's a great backup plan. So when that credit card machine goes down, everyone doesn't panic and say, hey, the Wi-Fi just went down, but if you could scan this code and send us a donation, that'd be great. Have your cashier upsell for a donation for your booster club at checkout. Hey, would you like to donate $2 to the booster club, and just have it as a button so they can add it to the total. Consider adopting a theme and doing it long term. We have a local high school band here in Texas that does a catfish fry every Friday night, and they're known for it. So all the other schools that play at that particular school know that on Friday nights you can go there and get the catfish. It's a big operation and they have to plan for it, but it's gotten to be famous and they sell more because of it. So if you can think of something that you can incorporate into some of your school spirit and your activities and make an event or food that your concession stand is known for, it'll help you boost sales. And then again, last quarter liquidation, drop your prices on perishable items, get them out the door, walk through the crowds if you have to. It's a great way to get a little money in. What I like to hear is we have a concession stand strategy and every event is profitable. That's what you want to do from a concession stand operator perspective, to make sure that you're planning for profit from the beginning, from equipment to safety, to food choices, and down to your sales techniques. That way your concession stand is a fundraiser and is adding to the bottom line of your booster club. We've got some great tools here. We've got a QR code where you can reach out and you can pick up our item cost calculator, menu profitability analysis, break even analysis, and event sales tracker. And would love to have you join us on future Boosted Volunteer webinars. You can find more information about our webinars at boosterhub.com. And while you're there, take a look at Booster Hub. We are a great tool to help you run your booster club like a champ. Have a great day.